Okay, so episode 2 unfolds, and it takes us forward into the story after their encounter with the sea dragon. They're all kind of hiding at the house, and lots of things happen. We want to talk about a very important character that's introduced in episode 2, and her name is...
Fennia. I think that I mentioned her before, and now it's time to talk about her because she was only a brief mention a few times in the books, but now it seems like she's this super spy in league with Oscar and Poto,
Yes.
giving a bunch of information and stuff and listening in on the Fangs conversations. That's kind of a big development with a very minor character.
That's very true, and this
really
is all
is.
on you, Chris. I remember you fought for this hard.
Yeah, I was like, we gotta, could we? And this is how it works. Hey, Andrew, could we take Fennia and build her out? And honestly, it was working backwards because it was, I really want to find a way to do this jailbreak at the end, and the kids have fled, because we structured that differently. And wouldn't Fennia be a good partner? And her and Oscar are close, and Oscar, you said in the books, is someone who's a part of the rebellion and, in some way knows gammon, he's got some things going. So what if we kind of talk about that a little bit? And then what if Fennia is that? And then the big unlock for me was she has a flower store, right? I think that's in the book, right?
Yeah.
She has a flower shop.
Fennia's flower
Okay.
shop.
And the Fangs think what about flowers?
They don't like him.
They hate them because
In
they
fact, that
smell
was
great.
Janner's whole idea. In the third one, he gives this bully blossom necklace
That's right.
to Sarah. I think that there's a merch version of that. Get it
There
on.
is, absolutely.
It's on sale right now.
So if she's got a flower shop, that's like the safest place in Glipwood.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Fangs are like,
Perfect
oh, I
for
can't
that.
go in there. It makes me feel terrible, right? Whatever. So I was like, okay, well, if that, then I bet she could have, and then we developed out the idea of her. But now, I think more importantly, that character needed a really good voice. We needed somebody really special.
Ellie Holcomb.
Ellie Holcomb.
The one and only. Yeah.
She's not here right now.
Ellie,
If that's what
do you
you're
want to tell us a
She's
little
great.
bit about your interaction with Ellie?
So yeah, Ellie Holcomb is a dear friend, and she did the Christmas tour with me one year. I don't know how many years, 10 years ago or something. But man, I've just been a huge fan of her music and what she does, and her husband Drew Holcomb. And Ellie, I walked into this the day that I met Ellie. I was dropping by Ben Shife's studio. Ben's my old buddy and produced most of my records, and I knew he was working with Ellie, so I kind of had to go by and drop him off something. And Ellie was in the studio, and I was like, "Oh, hey Ellie, I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you." And Ben was like, "Can I play you the song that we're recording right now?" And he played a song called "Marvelous Light," which she wrote after finishing North or Be Eaten, about Poto's, the kind of climax of Poto's story. So it was a very cool moment to have. Like, I was crying and Ellie was crying, and Ben wasn't crying because he doesn't cry. But but it was just a really sweet connection. So we connected over the Wingfeather Saga and then toured together, and she would sing that song every night and tell everybody, this is a song I wrote about this character named Poto Helmer, which is so cool. And so we were like, well, she's got to be in the show somewhere.
And she was so fun to record with.
Yeah.
She was into it. We had a blast with her.
She's awesome.
So that is Fennia, and you're right. I think we do look at all the characters that are in the books and think about what are the minor characters we can pull forward and use while not cluttering it up. Because you also are having simplify. You don't want to have too many characters, right? So that leads to another question. So what about all the kids? So this one, of course, has a bunch of kids who they play Zibzy with. This actually came up from a conversation with Kenny early on, Kenny and Jake, two of our writers, where he was like, I really want to know what's day-to-day life like for the Wingfeather kids, Igibys,
And their friends.
and their friends. They have friends, and some of them are getting taken by black carriages, right? But so what is their day-to-day, what are they into? Like,
Zibzy.
what's their kind of daily domestic interesting, because it's not in the books
It's
per
hinted
se, but it's talked about. Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
can we go down that alleyway? Thinking of which kids would go in and play Zibzy with them was fun. You had written the Blaggest Boys, of course, which there's an interesting part of that story we actually didn't tell in season 1, which is that Mayor Blaggest had 3 kids, and 1 kid was taken.
Yeah, but it's mentioned in episode 3, right?
Yeah,
when
we-
Poto and you are talking to Mayor Blaggest. I know them kind of getting
Kind of
into
hinted at, yeah. And so those 2 boys, we thought, well, let's introduce them. And they should be friends, right? And then Bunce is referenced, and we thought, well, let's pull him forward. And
Wait,
so
Bunce
easy
was
to,
referenced? I didn't know that I'm a big
Bunce is in the
reference.
stories. No, I don't.
Yeah, I
don't
think
know that
that
he is.
you all created him. I know a lot about Wingfeather,
It's been a
and
minute.
I don't know
remember.
Bunce.
Yeah.
But yeah, then for me, as far as the character types, I just go to The Sandlot.
Yeah.
I go to all of my favorite childhood movies,
Goonies.
which had
Yeah.
really authentic kids that I believe are like, that's a kid I could meet, right?
Yeah.
And how far can we push them? You know, who's got curly hair like you? Who's got straight hair? Who's got tall? Who's shorter? Who's
got
like,
huge muscles like me?
That was one of them. We talked about his huge muscles, actually. Don't laugh. So like, no, totally. Yeah.
Sorry.
That was a
Yeah,
perfect
totally.
laugh. Yeah, sure.
So then it was just figuring out, okay, great. Now we've got them. How do they play the game together? And who gets picked last? That was really fun, playing around like the idea of who gets picked and just kind of schoolyard game stuff with Zibzy.
Was it Doug that made up all the rules of the Zibzy game?
Yeah. So then we had this point where it was really funny. We got to where they had to take a timeout because the game wasn't going the way they wanted it to, and they were frustrated at the way he's playing. And so
Yeah,
Bunce,
they're talking about a bunch of
so
stuff
Bunce
that
has got to
sounds like
deliver
gibberish.
the strategy, and so Doug McKelvey, one of our writers, he's fantastic, who is a man of all sports. Not really. He
does not.
He does not love sports at all.
Watch or play.
I said, I need you to write a big sports ball passage, and so he came back with that crazy monologue that Bunce delivers.
You got something. They're whackers.
They're whackers, and so I remember being in the booth with that actor and going, "Good luck," because that's a complicated bit of text.
How much of that can you say off just from memory?
I think that maybe there was a part where Bunce says, Waltink, it's either Waltink or by that point, I'll have already skittered around their hounders. Or something.
There it
Skittered
is.
around their hounders.
By that point, I will have already skittered around their hounders.
So
Something
good.
like that, I think.
Yep, that's good.
We also had fun playing with the idea that they could
Moosh
ride.
their whappers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Gambloats.
Moose, their whackers. On the gambloats. Yeah, we thought it would be fun to like get a gambloat involved. And what would happen if they hopped on the back of one.
Yeah.
And about the games and all that stuff, they're talking about the team plan, and Tink says Jenner gets woozy around Sarah, which kind of evolves some of that a bit more.
That's right.
I'm also kind of wondering about that and like how much you wanted to expand that, how much you did expand it, and like I feel like I'm kind of getting ahead about season 2, but about like their final meeting, which is kind of just like a big thing, and in a way, it's almost sad that that's the last time that they.
They don't
see
know that
each
though,
other.
right? They
I guess
actually
in a
no.
way
He
that-
sees them in the next episode.
I know, but no, what I'm saying is like in season 2, when Jenner kind of feels guilty about that.
That's
Right.
true. Yeah, he doesn't know that it's the end.
I
think
didn't
that,
even think about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think so. One of the things there is the I thought was interesting to play with too is Sarah's not just a mute cute kind of girl. She's actually contributing. So she shows up with what? Do you remember?
The ball.
That she made.
Yeah.
But think about how that was played. I will say there are no rules that we could really track cleanly for Zibzy. It's quite random. And so we had a ball, we had whackers, and we threw things into bales of straw. That's what we did.
Cool. Now, back to Fennia and all that stuff.
Oh, we're back to Fennia again.
So
Okay.
sorry. So she's spying on the Fangs, and one of the times that she's doing that, Commander Norm is talking about some stuff and about how they're marching and how he's demoting Stark. Norm and Vop are also talking about fanging and all that stuff. Care to elaborate about any of that?
Yeah, they the refanging, like how someone might need 2 refangings.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking
Yeah.
about a little bit in my story that I gave
Oh.
to the
Oh,
making of the
absolutely.
Fang.
Yeah.
So that does get hinted at in book 1 in the books.
Really? Where?
Yeah, well, it hints at the fact that I can't remember exactly where,
Oh,
but it
wait.
talks
think I
about how
know.
the fangs get transferred from place to place.
Yeah, and how the commanders leave for like a month and return meaner.
Yep. And so the
Yeah.
idea is
Yeah, that's
that
what I was
they
hinting
need to
at.
be re-exposed to to the stone somehow and kind of recharge their fanginess to keep them from going crazy.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of the stones, there's a scene at the end of the episode with this robed woman and General Crack.
Yep.
Why did you decide to add that?
Oh, man, that was a very specific... We talked about it at length of... One of the things I love about the first book is it's so charming and we're having a good time, but you really don't realize that you're part of a massive world that Mr. Peterson has built in his mind and is going to unfold in these books until a little bit later. And I was like, man, I would love to help the audience to know that they're part of something really huge. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, what if we pull forward a character? So what if we just hopped across over to Torborough and showed them the Stonekeeper? Because we know in the stories that she's there, because she's over in the Foob Islands, so she could totally be here, and we could introduce another villain, General Crack.
And I love the fact that one of the things you did when you were kind of taking apart the story and looking at it from a television point of view, you pointed out a lot of things that would have been happening concurrently. You know, things that I was so focused on the Igiby story, and then as you're telling the story linearly, I'm pulling in stuff. But you were like, well, she would have been doing that stuff, you know, whatever. So it was kind of a fun realization for me to go, oh man, while this is happening, the Stonekeeper's hanging out in Torborough.
Yep, and Gammon and Florid Sword would have been doing business in Dugtown.
Yeah.
And so that introduced these flyers, right, which we're going to get to pretty quick, of, you know, getting into, like, showing that there's other things happening. Right?
Exactly. That's the final thing that I felt like we needed to discuss about the mysterious map. We haven't even really covered books and crannies yet. Anything that you want to say about the choices made there, like Zuzab and the Itch Book and the fruit and all that?
Because that is the name of the episode, Mysterious Map. It is the key thing that happens.
Yeah, it's very important, and yet we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, sorry, we jumped to the other part.
I will say that when I do school visits, which is they ask me to do a reading, that's the scene I always read, because I love the moment when I kind of set it up and I tell the kids who don't know the story, this is what's going on. And then I read the part where Tank looked down and his foot bumped something and the whole room gets still. And I say, and he pulled out, he realized there was a little panel underneath the bookshelf. It was like every kid in the world wants that to happen. You know what I mean? And so I was so happy that made it into the show, that scene happened. It's a little different, but it's the heart of it is the same. Yeah.
And one thing, Journal of Bonifer Swoon. It was mentioned in the books, but not in the show. And we kind of need to introduce Bonifer for later in this series. Why did you not do that there, and how are you planning on doing that?
Yeah, it's just another character to introduce that it's hard to keep track of all these people, right? And Bonifer is going to have his proper introduction and a lot of stuff in season 4. But it's like, how many characters can you keep track of? Do you know, like, if you've watched a lot of Star Wars stuff, there's, like, so many Jedi. It's like there's a place where your brain just can't hold on to them. So we thought instead it was more interesting to have that book that he finds with Oscar, is what you're talking about, be just a different book. You know, that would play better. But the mysterious map was keyed in this episode. When we think about, like, the major events, the first episode was about Lily and the Sea Dragon. The second episode is about finding this map. That's the key thing that has to happen for us to be able to move forward in the story. Into episode 3. So there we are, episode 2. Read and watch campaign has moved forward in episode 2. Thank you all for joining us.
So if you're reading along, that's chapters 15 through 19.
Chapters 15 through 19. And we're going to next go in episode 3. It's our mid-season episode. It's a big one. And be sure to join us for that one. Cooper, always good to have you. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us.
You're welcome. By the way, if you need help understanding any of the stuff, just come to me and I'll give you the cheat sheet for the test if you want to get
Yes, and at the end there will be a special link you can follow and win a drawing for some of these fine, amazing characters.
So I'll hand you the cheat sheet.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks.